everyone. This is Des. You're listening to The Wellness Project, powered by Spotlight Coalition, and this is episode number 72. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Nazanin. She is a clinical psychologist and sex therapist. I'm really excited about this episode because I have not had a sex therapist on the show yet, and I think talking about sex is very, very important. It's something that in our society is quite a taboo, but it's a healthy part of our existence. It's a normal and healthy part of our relationships and lives. I think that this is going to be a really informative episode, and I'm so excited to have a professional on to talk about it. I do want to just say, please forgive me and Nazanin. We were both sick while recording this episode. So I recorded this episode actually a while ago in October, and this is while I was recovering from COVID. This was recorded during my second week, so I was starting to feel better, but there's coughs here and there, and I'm quite congested and stuffy, and Nazanin told me she was sick as well. So please just forgive us and don't mind our little bit of nasally voices. Otherwise, it's an amazing episode, and I think you're going to gain a lot from it. So let's talk with Nazanin now about all things sex. Everyone, I'm so excited. I am here with Nazanin Moali. She is a clinical psychologist and sex therapist. Nazanin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited about this conversation.
I am too. I'm really excited because I have not had a sex therapist on yet. And I think it's such an important topic. First of all, can we start out with just tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got into this work, and why you feel it's important?
I'm a clinical psychologist. What's interesting, I started my work in the field of addiction and working with eating disorder recovery, but I always felt comfortable talking about sex. I thought sex education is really important. And through my own journey of struggling with sexual challenges, I learned a lot. I went to a sex therapist. She really helped me to change my life in a way and my limiting beliefs. So I learned a lot about sex. And what I discovered was interesting that even I always invite my clients, if you had any question, even before I was a sex therapist, share that with me. And I figured that the people have so many questions about their sexual health, and they don't have reliable places to ask these questions. And people are sitting with the shame and guilt that there's something wrong with me, when in fact, many times the struggle they have is it's very common and normal, and B, it can be resolved with a little bit of information. I don't think there's any other field in the field of psychology that a little bit of psychoeducation people can do so well. That's why I was like, okay, I want to do sex therapy as part of my practice, because I believe sexual health is important for our overall health, and it can help kind of elevate our relationships with our partners.
Oh, yeah, I fully agree. I think it's so important. And like you said, that shame and embarrassment, I think, takes over. And I think as sexualized as some aspects of our society are, I think that it's definitely something that still people feel is a taboo, and people don't like talking about sex or the sexual aspect of their relationships and things like that. And then people are suffering silently. So it's great that, you have your podcast and everything, and you see clients and they have a place that they could go for that information, because I agree, it's so important. So do you feel like sexual issues in a relationship or sexual dissatisfaction, do you think that affects other aspects of someone's life?
Absolutely. I don't think you can have a great relationship if the sexual part is not working. I know that there are part of population that they identify with asexual, so that's a different conversation. But beside that, many people are in the place of resignation. Many couples are in the place of resignation with their sexuality. They feel they're great companion, they're great parents, but they're not sexually compatible with their partner. And it shows up in their relationship, in the quality of connection they're having outside the bedroom. It shows up as how they show up for work, for the kind of recreational thing that they do, because there is this underlying dissatisfaction for many people. And at times there is this dynamic of there is one partner that has higher desire, and there's another partner that has lower desire at time. And one partner at times they feel rejected. And it feels very personal. It's not about you're rejecting me having sex with you. At times it feels like you are rejecting me as a person. And the resentment that it creates can really impact the relationship.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that. And do you think that sexual dissatisfaction stems from issues outside of the bedroom? Like, what does sexual dissatisfaction look like, and where do you think it stems from?
It can come from many places. One place I can come from is like lack of good communication with your partner. Our needs changes, our body evolves, but if you're not talking about it with our partners, it's going to be hard to get our needs met. There is this misconception in the society that if your partner likes you, he or she must know what you like. No one is a mind reader. So when we are kind of like subscribing to that way of thinking, we are setting ourselves for disappointment and leads to dissatisfaction because our needs are not getting met. But sometimes dissatisfaction coming from this place of I asked what I wanted, but my partner didn't show up interest in what I'm interested in sexually, or it didn't show up motivation to do these things. And at times that can feel like rejection and feels like alienation and leads to sexual dissatisfaction. We all are our own individual person, right? That no one, sometimes people think that in order for couples to be compatible, they need to be aligned exactly sexually. That's not true. At times, we have kinks and interests and things that are not necessarily aligned with our partner, but we're still a sexual person. So it's important to learn that if these needs are not getting met with my partner, what are some of the other places that I can meet my need that's not this disagreement with my relationship agreement? So I think negotiating those things are also important.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And is it typical for both partners to be unsatisfied sexually, or do you find that it's usually just one partner?
Well, I've seen all combination of things that when things are not going well in the bedroom, it's my experience that both party get impacted because it becomes this kind of a feedback loop that I'm not excited about sex that because I'm not getting my needs met, you can see that I'm not enthusiastic and that dampens my excitement and that can turn to this kind of vicious cycle of lack of enthusiasm, lack of excitement, and at times avoiding sex. But there are at times that there is one person that's dissatisfied and the other person is getting their needs met. And in some heterosexual relationship, at times I've seen that women being in that role, they didn't give themselves permission to lean into pleasure. They were socialized that sex is something that's for men and women are not supposed to enjoy it or it's not a priority for them. So they continue doing things for their partner to keep their relationship. And that's not aligned with the erotic blueprint. That's not aligned with what they want. And what happens is long term when we're doing things that they're not exciting for us sexually, that dampens our desire. It diminishes our interest and that can lead to sexual dissatisfaction. So it really depends on what's happening in the relationship.
Are there any common causes of sexual dissatisfaction in a relationship?
Absolutely. There are so many different causes. It could be personal challenges that someone have, mental health challenges like depression, anxiety, OCD, all of those things can impact our overall sexual health. Therefore, it can impact how we're connecting with our partner. At times, it could be relational factors, right? That has nothing to do perhaps with what's happening in the bedroom. But because I feel so much resentment toward you because of all of those things that you did to me, you didn't show up for me, or even in day to day, like you didn't do your chores. I have many clients that are telling me that my partner was not doing their part as a parent. And I'm just so turned off by the interaction they had outside the bedroom that I'm not into, because I don't desire them. I'm not into having sex with them. So that can lead to sexual dissatisfaction. Or perhaps I have many clients that the couple experience infidelity. That leads to sexual dissatisfaction because now they're trying to move past the infidelity and they haven't done the work of processing it. And at times they feel bombarded by images, the feeling that comes up when they want to be intimate with partner. The other thing that can lead to sexual dissatisfaction is lack of sexual skill. Sex is a skill. It's something that many people were not taught. Like sex education that people learn is often either from watching porn. I don't have anything against porn, but it's not sex education. It doesn't portray realistic skills and doesn't portray realistic image of what's supposed to happen. So people either learn their skill from there or from their middle school friend. So we don't invest in learning our sexual skills or improving it. We kind of tend to stick to such a narrow range of behaviors because we feel insecure and vulnerable to do something else. And that can lead to sexual dissatisfaction.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, sex education is not great. And I heard a statistic, it was disturbing. It was like a high number of people get their sex education from porn. And like you said, it's not realistic at all. So that can lead to a whole lot of issues. I've heard that a lot, actually, that comment about the chores. Typically women get turned off by their partner when they feel like they're doing more than their share. So I have heard that that's common. Do you think that there is a difference between sexual boredom and sexual dissatisfaction?
Well, they could definitely overlap, right? That sometimes, but to me, sexual dissatisfaction is more of awareness for people. At times, I tell my client that sexual boredom is silent killer of the relationship because there is something is not working for you, but it's hard to pinpoint that at times we're not in kind of like action mode. Right. When we're thinking about stages of change, we're thinking about, okay, this is boring. This is not where I want it to be, but maybe it's not that bad. But when we're in the place of sexual dissatisfaction, oftentimes people are kind of more motivated to change things, but they definitely can overlap.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. And so it sounds like it's really important to be connected sexually in your relationship. You date and there's that sexual attraction typically. So is this something that happens over time, this sexual disconnection?
Absolutely. One of my mentors was saying that everyone can fall in love. Falling in love, having good sex early on is easy, but maintaining passion is hard because early on in the relationship, our body is overwhelmed with all of those feeling good hormones and excitement, and things are novel. It's easier to be spontaneous sexually. We are making more effort. But when we are long term in a relationship, if we're not working on it, that can go to this place of kind of like becoming less of a priority. And over time, you end up in a sexless relationship. I was looking at statistic that in America, 20% of couples, they are in sexless relationships. It's a huge number thinking about like 20%. It's my experience that most people, they don't start from there. They're excited about each other, they have good sexual experiences, then they stay together and life happens, whether they have kids and work becomes stressful, and maintaining passion and good sexual routine requires effort. And people think if they have this mentality that if I'm working on my sex life, then this is not healthy. That's not what I want to do. But when we're not working on it slowly, it becomes less of a priority, and your partner turns to your roommate. And after a while, it's really hard to connect because you feel like we haven't been intimate for a while. I don't feel connected with my partner, and it will require significant more amount of work to kind of rekindle passion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. There's always that kind of, we hear it in media, we see it in movies that, the couple that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, that they've been married a long time and, they don't have sex anymore. Like it's always like a common trope in movies. So do you think it's normal, or maybe not even normal, but common for couples to lose that passion, then that spark after time without putting the effort in?
I'm so glad you brought it up because I wanted to talk about a couple of things about that. People assume that with aging, it comes like there's like your sex life has an expiration date. Like after a certain age, then you're not sexual. That belief is not only in media. I have clients that they go to primary care and they talk to their physician that, this medication has this side effect of lowering my libido. And the message they're getting that, like it's part of aging and it's not important. So I think that part is really important. It's my experience that couples can have great sexual experiences as far as the frequency, quality, in all stages of their life. I have clients in 60s, 70s that they have connected sexual experiences, and it's very meaningful and fulfilling. Sometimes when we get older, we experience some other challenges like health challenges or issues with our mobility that they require more problem solving to help us to get back to good sexual health as well. But it's not necessarily the fact that you're old, therefore, sex is not a priority. But I think going back to kind of couples in a long term relationship that you talked about, that then they are in a later stages of life, is that marriages, relationships are long, and so many things can happen in couples' life that require them to pivot, kind of like they were doing one kind of a dance before and now they have to do a different kind of dance. And if we don't have ongoing conversations about this and talking about, honey, this no longer is working for me, for us, what can we do if we're trying to have the same kind of sexual experiences that we had in our 20s or 30s and now in 60s and 70s? Of course, that's not going to work and people feel defeated. So I think as long as you're having good conversations about it, as long as you are working on your overall health, it's definitely healthy and normal for you to have satisfying sexual life.
That's great for people to hear because I think that people do fall into that thought pattern of, oh, well, we're older, we've been together a long time, this is normal that we don't have sex anymore, where, like you said, it leaks into all different aspects of the relationship. But I think that it might be hard for people to have that mindset that this is an aspect of our relationship that we have to work on and put effort into. I think people don't want to put effort into their sexual relationship. And I think in a way, people think that it should just be natural and flow effortlessly.
Absolutely. And I always, other thing I tell my clients that everything worth having in life requires effort. I think there is no way that like you will have something that would be important for you and precious if you're not investing in it. And your sex life is exactly like that. And especially with kind of relational aspect of sexual relationship in couples in long-term relationship, because it's just so multi-layered and it's important to address to all different parts of it in order for you to have a healthy relationship that will lead to exciting sexual experiences.
Okay, I think that's so true. And I think people really need to hear that message. Yeah, absolutely. So, do you find though that a lot of people feel shame around their sexual desires? I mean, it's something that's so vulnerable to even speak to your partner about.
Yes, yes. And I think big part of it, it comes from our upbringing. In my practice in LA, I work with such a diverse population. And I hear a lot from people that when I talk about their upbringing, they said like they either their parents didn't talk about sex at all, or they thought that sex was it was so sinful, bad, something to avoid. I did this survey in my podcast. 1,000 people completed that survey. 80% of them, they said that they grew up in a culture that the religion that said sex was sinful. So it's so pervasive in our society, kind of thinking about sex is bad growing up. Parents have this a very kind of a harsh reaction when they catch their kids stimulating themselves, and they kind of shame the kid. I have clients that they told me that their parents wash them in a hot water, they put pepper in their mouth because of they were exploring their body. So we grow up with this kind of mentality that exploring your body is bad, you're dirty if you're touching your body, and there is no place to gain good information around sex. So I think people don't have education about it. Many parents, even they don't show their affection in front of their children. I'm not saying that you have to have sex in front of children, of course not, but it's healthy to have some template of what is a passionate, affectionate marriage look like. So people grow up with not knowing what do that look like. The templates of what sexy is come from porn, and they see that okay, this is not who I am. I don't know what my brand of sexiness is. And I grew up with this messaging of sex is bad, sex is sinful. And for women, there is another layer of like this socialization of like, okay, good women, they don't think about sex. Good girl, they don't think about sex. Sex is dirty. No one want a girl that likes sex. So I think all of these things are so embedded in women's upbringing that creates this conflict, even when they are in the relationship, that they want to lean into pleasure, do all of those those programming show up for them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, those messages, like you said, are so pervasive in every aspect of our society. I mean, yeah, it's really tough. It sounds like it may take a lot more effort than people think to have a healthy relationship sexually with their partner.
And that's something you can cultivate. It doesn't mean like if you were not taught to be like have sexual conversation. If shame shows up for you, then you will not be able to have satisfying, good enough sexual experiences. It's like any other skill that you can learn.
So, do you have any tips for those people that may be sexually unsatisfied in their relationship, but they may feel very embarrassed or shameful to bring up this vulnerable aspect to their partner?
I think that's very important to bring up your dissatisfaction with your partner because our partners are not mind readers. If we're not talking to them, they might not pick up what's happening. And I want people to think about like your sexual health is important, is part of your overall health. Therefore, you deserve to have a good sex life because sometimes people think that, oh, sex is a luxury. But I argue for many people, it's a necessity, it's part of being alive. So it's important to keep that in mind that that's healthy to want to have good sexual experiences. If you have dissatisfaction, there are a number of different ways that you can go about it. My invitation for people is for every person who's in a relationship that's listening to this show, I want them to set some time during the month for kind of have this ongoing date night with your partner that you're talking about your sex life. And it doesn't need to be like super structured. It's like, this is like Friday night of the first week of the month. We're going to open up some wine and then we're going to talk about what are we doing that's working, what do you want more of, what do we want different. So it could be something like that. So we have this ongoing conversation around sex. So long term, it's not awkward for us to talk about it. So that's one invitation I have for people. If this is something that you haven't talked about it and you feel dissatisfied, my invitation for you is to kind of spend some time and reflect, journal about what is it, what you want more of? What is the source of dissatisfaction? Because sometimes we know we're dissatisfied, but we don't have the answer of what is happening for us. So it requires some reflection, kind of like personal reflection of thinking about, okay, what do I want more of? Because if we're vague about what we want, our partner might not be able to help us. So one way of doing that is like I'm journaling about what do you want more of, kind of an objective way, writing about it. And then you can talk to your partner that, honey, there's something I want to talk to you about it. It takes 10 minutes. When will you be available? The reason I'm saying like 10 minutes is usually it's easier if we know that this is a shorter kind of time bound agreement we're having. We're not going to sit talk about it for hours. It's going to be 10 minutes, but we're going to have this conversation. And you're not catching your partner in the middle of kind of them doing something else that they are not emotionally available. At the time of the conversation, my invitation for people is like to always start with positive. We all heard about compliment sandwich. We know about it, but still, it feels so much better if someone serves us a compliment sandwich, feedback sandwich, versus when they're kind of give us the harsh truth. Of course, that can be a kind of like a personal communication style choice, but I find that most people are more willing to hear you out if you start with something that's working in a relationship. So starting the conversation saying, this is what's working for me. I love it, honey, when you kiss my neck. I love it when you are writing this for me. So talking about something specifically that's working in your relationship and then transition into talking about what's not working for you, kind of focusing on yourself using I statement and having some kind of a solution at the end. Kind of like, I would like to have more of this, or this is what I was thinking. Because sometimes we bring up the concern, but we don't offer any solution. Of course, we don't want to go into the conversation thinking about this is what I'm going to get, right? That kind of coming to this place of entitlement. But sometimes when we offer solutions, that can be easier for our partner to know where to go. But that can be a good place to go. If it feels really uncomfortable, I have many clients that they come to therapy to have a third person helping them to facilitate these conversations. So that can be another option.
Oh, those are really great tips. Thank you for that. I think that's very, very helpful for people. Do you have any separate tips at all for couples that can prevent this sexual dissatisfaction that they could keep their passion alive throughout their relationship?
Absolutely. So I think first thing is to know that it's very common and at time expected for your sex life to become less exciting if you're not investing in it. First thing I'm going to say that I know is going to turn off so many people, but it's so important. If you want to save money in therapy in future, write it down. You have to schedule intimate time with your partner. I'm not going to say that like necessarily it's a time that you have to have intercourse, but this is the kind of time that you have with your partner dedicated for you and them to connect. So this is a time kind of having that like a Saturday morning is our intimate time, and you're scheduling it in your schedule, like anything else that like you have in your schedule. If you have kids, you get a babysitter. That's something that you saving a spot for it. So if you want to be intimate, then you will not worry about what happens to the kids, and they're not going to be additional barriers. So that's the first part. Have ongoing kind of sexual date. Second part is that kind of have this check-in that we talk about with your partner months and months, talking about what's working, what's not working. And going to the sexual boredom piece, I think what's important for many couples is to experiment with adding some level of novelty into your sex life. It doesn't mean that you have to get swings and all sorts of fancy things in your bedroom. It could be like for novelty, we're trying this position. Like it's a new position, we're trying this, something that breaks the routine. Like reducing boredom, it could be we're going to take a sex class and see, okay, what can we do for sexual skill? One thing I recommend all of my clients to do is together to create a sexual bucket list. These are the list of the things that we want to experiment. I'm not saying that I'm going to do it next month, but these are the things that I want to experiment and you want to experiment. What are some of the overlaps? So there are things that like we can kind of build towards. So that also can be important. And I think the other piece of it is that kind of noticing if the boredom is showing up for you and being curious about it on a personal level, because sometimes boredom could be result of what's happening in sex life. For some people, at times, boredom is more about what's happening and not happening in their life. So maybe the life that you're living is not as exciting. Many people have affair not because they don't like their partner anymore. Sometimes people have affair because they don't like the version of themselves that they are in the current relationship with the partner. They want to explore different parts of themselves. So it's going to be interesting to be curious about if boredom shows up for you, if it's relational or there's a part of it kind of personally that you have to work on.
Okay. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that is really good for people to know. And I like what you said. I think that may help a lot of people too, because there are couples that they experience an infidelity in the relationship and they try to move on. And I think that, obviously that's very, very difficult. But I like how you said that it may not be because, you don't like your partner, maybe because you don't like that version of yourself. I think that's important for people to hear, and that could be healing. Absolutely. Along those lines, do you have anything that you can say to people that maybe they feel very insecure sexually, they don't feel confident, maybe they don't like their bodies or the way they look naked, those kind of things? Do you have anything to say to people to help them build their confidence sexually at all?
Absolutely. I think the first step is kind of thinking about if you're feeling that way, that's normal. We are bombarded in our society with this rigid picture of what sexy is supposed to look like. This kind of like a supermodel Victoria's Secret person who's like 20 and they have like certain kind of body. People get shamed for if they have diverse bodies, like constantly. On the other side, we get this advertisements for weight loss, all of that. So it's normal if you picked up some of these negative messaging from the society. One thing that's important to keep in mind is that sexy is how you feel inside. It's not how it looks like. Many women that I work with, they tell me although their body significantly changed in their 40s and 50s, they have excellent, much better sexual life then because they are more comfortable in their skin. Keep that in mind that sexual energy is an energy and doesn't have to do anything with what you look like. If you are feeling uncomfortable about your body, I think it's important to think about what are some of the stories that you're telling about yourself and your sexual self. And I think at times it's helpful to find a version of sexy that works for you. So sexy persona, even like I tell my clients, like what actors or actresses look sexy to you that's close to your personality. Because it's important to kind of like broaden our definition of what sexy is. And at times people are able to identify people that are closer to their style. So I think that's important. One thing that at times helps some of my clients is that they get lingerie, clothing, things that helps them to tap into their different parts of their personality. It's almost like a role playing that when I'm wearing this persona comes up. Because sometimes for many people, shame is so strong that it's hard for them to connect with their bodies in the moment. So if there is a way that we can kind of create a ritual that almost we tap into different parts of ourselves, that can be powerful. Hopefully long term you will not need that, but sometimes I know when we start that's not available to us. I think the other piece of it is also kind of like building a better relationship with your body. So one thing I'm going to say that might be a little bit kind of uncomfortable, so for some people, is to kind of be comfortable with exploring your body, knowing your body. Because again, going back to the idea of like what sex looks like, then it's hard to kind of like have that image of this is what sex is. I supposed to look like this person, but I don't know what my body is. I think when you know your pleasure and you know your body, you're familiar with your body, you're showing up with more confidence.
That is fantastic. Nazanin, this has been so amazing talking to you. I think it's such an important conversation. I think the work that you do is so important. And I think you're really, really helping people. It's important to talk about, and we have to get rid of this taboo that, people feel like they can't talk about sex or their sexuality. Like you said, it's completely normal. It's a normal part of life. It's an important part of life. So thank you so much for talking to me today. Can you tell everybody where to find you?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I have a weekly podcast called Sexology. I've been releasing weekly shows, episodes in last 5 years. It's called Sexology, and people can find it wherever they listen to podcasts in Spotify, iTunes, all of those great places. The website is sexologypodcast.com. I have a private practice in LA that I see people in person and virtually. So if someone is interested in that, they can contact me. And the website for private practice is oasistutor.com. And also people can find me on my social media and Instagram, and the handle is at Sexology Podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm going to link all of those in the show notes. And don't you also have a masterclass?
Yes, but the enrollment is closed for this round. So
Okay.
yes, I have a masterclass called Tired of Leftover Sex. I'll reopen it in January. So if people are interested, they can sign up for the waiting list. But thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for the work you do. And everybody, I'm going to link everything in the show notes. So go check out everything there. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Nazanin, thank you so much for coming on my show to talk about this very important topic. I hope you all kept an open mind while listening to this episode. I know that sex can be a taboo subject, but it's very important for us to talk about. As Nazanin was saying, it affects all aspects of our lives and our intimate relationships with our partners. So it's very important to talk about. I encourage you to go check out Nazanin's podcast, her masterclass, her website. Everything is in the show notes. So go check her out because she has a lot of amazing resources and freebies and everything that I was looking into as well. Highly recommend. So make sure you share my podcast, share this episode, share my podcast in general on your social media. Share it with friends or family that you know want to improve their mental health. As you know, if you're a longtime listener, if you're new, welcome. But I interview lots of professionals in the field to give lots of mental health and wellness tips and advice. So definitely share my podcast and tag me on social media. I will see you all in a few weeks. Talk to you then.